Good evening, everybody. Tonight is our 30th SWOG webinar, which will be hosted by myself and Morag. Thank you for joining us. We're delighted to welcome Morag Boyd, Rural Hedgehog Officer for the People's Trust for Endangered Species and the British Hedgehog Preservation Society. Hedgehogs are one of Britain's best-loved mammals, but sadly they're in decline. This evening, Morag will introduce us to hedgehog conservation in woodland habitats, sharing practical evidence-based ways that woodland owners and managers can help create safer, better connected habitats for this remarkable species. There'll be time for questions as we go along if you pop them in the chat, and we will address them at the end. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Morag. Morag, over to you.
Okay, couldn't find the unmute button. There we go. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming along. And yeah, I'm going to be talking to you about hedgehogs. It's going to be kind of broader than woodlands, and then we'll focus into woodlands at the end and cover woodland management and any questions and how you guys can potentially help us as well with what we're trying to do with hedgehogs as well. So I shall start with an introduction to the two organisations. PTS and BHPS, who we are and what we do. A bit about hedgehogs, just about hedgehog biology and ecology. General threats to hedgehogs and the decline in the hedgehog population. Thinking hedgehogs, so thinking about how we manage land for hedgehogs and how you guys can help with improving the situation for hedgehogs and helping us find out more about hedgehogs in woodlands as well. And then a little bit about our ongoing projects, Hedgehog Street. So something is hidden behind the NHMP, the big hedgehog map, and our state of Britain's hedgehog. So I'll cover all those as well. So first of all, People's Trust for Endangered Species, who are my host organisation. I'm employed by both People's Trust for Endangered Species and BHPS, but I'm hosted, so I work out of the PTS offices. Well, I don't actually, I work from home. The offices are in London and I'm based in Fife in Scotland, so I don't go to the office very often at all. But the People's Trust for Endangered Species, we've been standing up for wildlife for nearly 50 years. We are very science-based and we fund scientific research. We work with conservationists. We have a lot of work with landowners and the general public, and we're trying to protect, I guess, our delicately balanced ecosystem, bringing most threatened species back from the brink. So the main species that we at PTS work for are hedgehogs, dormice, stag beetles, and water voles. And then we have a hedgerow specialist who is incredibly knowledgeable and an orchard specialist as well. So we do a little bit in habitats, a lot on species. The British Hedgehog Preservation Society, registered charity, founded a long time ago in 1982 and dedicated purely to helping hedgehogs and purely to the UK Erinaceus europaeus hedgehog. Campaigns, advocacy, lots and lots of different ways of working to raise awareness. We also support hedgehog rehabilitators. We provide information to the public when they find a hedgehog, what they should do with a hedgehog. Is that hedgehog in need of help, or is that hedgehog better to be just left to go on its merry way? So BHPS are much more focused specifically on hedgehogs. So a little bit about hedgehogs. The West European hedgehog, which is our hedgehog, Erinacea europaeus. It's one of 19 species, probably, across the world. We keep getting species broken down into subspecies and things, but we think it's about 19 species. It's our only spiny mammal in the UK. It is nocturnal, which means that you don't see them out during the day usually. We will cover that. So occasionally you do see them out during the day, and it is okay in certain circumstances if you do see them out during the day. In certain circumstances, it's not okay if you see them out during the day, but they're essentially nocturnal. They're omnivorous, but basically insectivorous, mainly eating invertebrates. So what we call macro-invertebrates, the bigger ones, caterpillars, beetles, worms, the bigger invertebrates are their favoured food. And they're usually brown in colour, but there are a couple of locations where you find blonde hedgehogs, and those are on islands where people have imported hedgehogs and have imported blonde ones, and so they have which is a very unusual um, genetic mutation that you don't see very often at all. But in I think I can't remember the name of the island, but one of them has blonde hedgehogs because somebody imported a pair of blonde hedgehogs, and therefore they all descended from this pair of blonde hedgehogs. So quite pretty. Their anatomy, they're a very unspecialized skeleton, so there's nothing unusual about the skeleton of a hedgehog compared to other mammals. Yeah, generalized limb and girdle structure, short neck and tail, but the specialization comes in their skin, and that's what makes them um, different from other animals. And obviously, the prickles that they have, which are effectively modified hairs. So they're made from the same substance as hairs are made from, but they're modified to be sharp and spiky. And they have thousands of them. So the specialization obviously comes from the defense mechanism that hedgehogs use. They have no fight or flight response. They don't run away. When they're frightened, their immediate response is to, first of all, frown because they're thinking about being frightened. And they have a muscle that pulls their prickles into an upright position. So lots of tiny muscles in the base of the bases of their prickles, and they'll frown and pull their prickles forward over the face. You can see the one on the left is frowning. He's pulled the prickles forward over his face. All the prickles all over his back are now standing upright. Normally they would be lying fairly flat, but now they're all standing upright because he's thinking about being frightened, and then deciding to roll up and basically completely defend himself by being rolled up into a ball. But it's more complicated than just rolling up into a ball. They don't just curl up. It's not just like any animal that's decided to tuck their nose into their feet. They have around the base of their skirt of prickles a muscle called the orbicularis muscle. And that orbicularis muscle tightens. So after they frown, they then tighten this orbicularis muscle, and it's like pulling the string on a drawstring bag, and it pulls their head in and tucks their feet in, and it's really, really tight underneath. And that little hole where you can see the nose there gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's a really clever mechanism that makes it very difficult for you to forcibly unroll a hedgehog. No mammals, apart from badgers, are able to forcibly unroll a hedgehog, and humans, it's hard work to unroll them. You can kind of jiggle them around and they'll eventually unroll themselves, but trying to put your fingers in there amongst all the prickles and forcibly unroll them is really, really hard. So a very clever defense mechanism. Okay, looking at a year in the life of a hedgehog. Oh, now I don't know if we can hear the sound on my videos. I've got a couple of little videos. I'm not sure if the sound will play.
Don't worry, it's unlikely it will, Morag, but don't worry, we'll if we watch them and you want to send them to me, I can post them around.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, doke. So in winter, hedgehogs are hibernating, so they're one of the true hibernators. We don't have any true hibernators in the UK. Bats, hedgehogs, and trying to think of what the other one is that truly hibernates. There's a third one, I can't think of it right now. Truly hibernate, they switch off, effectively lower their metabolism very, very low, breathe very, very infrequently. Their heart rate is lowered, and they use up very, very little energy while they're hibernating.
Is that called a
In spring,
torpor? Like a badger, like a
sorry?
torpor? Is it called torpor?
It's called torpor. Well, in a badger, badgers go into torpor, but torpor isn't as deep as hibernation. So animals can raise themselves out of torpor much more easily with much less energy requirements. The problem with true hibernators is that coming out of hibernation uses up a lot of energy, and actually speeding up their heart and speeding up their breathing rate, etc., uses up a lot of energy. So hibernation is quite risky from that point of view. So when they come out of hibernation in springtime, that's when they hit breeding season almost straight away. And I've got a wee video of a couple of hedgehogs courting in a moment. That's quite interesting. That's why I was hoping that the sound will be hearable, or audible. So yeah, springtime is mating season. So they have to come out of hibernation, start eating as fast as they can because their weight will be very low. They need to get their energy back, and the males are immediately thinking about finding a female and mating. And the males are not monogamous. They will go around and mate with as many females as they can find. And yeah, females can have litters of hoglets that have multiple different fathers as well. So quite clever stuff. In summer, so the hoglets, so I've just heard of the first litter of hoglets that somebody has seen just today. So hoglets are beginning to appear in sort of June, July time, and yeah, you'll see these little spiky miniature hedgehogs trundling along behind mum. And in autumn, obviously, they're preparing for that long hibernation that they have, and they'll go into hibernation anytime from September. So a big male will hibernate for a longer time. He'll go into hibernation earlier, but he'll also come out a little bit earlier as well. So he could be thinking about hibernating anytime from mid-September onwards. Females tend to be more towards the end of October that they'll go into hibernation, and they'll all kind of emerge in March-ish time from their hibernation. So this is my all picture. This is just lots and lots of baby hedgehogs, just so you can see how super cute they are. Top right, you can see them. Those are ones that have relatively recently been born. They're born with the prickles. They have all the prickles intact when they're born, but the prickles are enclosed inside a fluid-filled sac so that they can be birthed without it being too painful. Um, but the prickles are there as a defense mechanism from day one. So once they've dried out, the prickles are there. So that's the baby hedgehogs. So hibernation, to survive hibernation, they have to be in good condition, and therefore you get hedgehogs that will go on for longer. The later born hedgehogs, so if you get a second litter of hedgehogs, they may be foraging and out foraging for longer, potentially into December to try and get their weight up to hibernation weight. They need to be at least 450 grams. And as I said, males often enter before females and then rouse slightly before the females, March, April time. Okay, so hedgehogs, they mate in early spring and into the summer. So the mating season goes on into the summer. And this is a quote from if you read about hedgehogs, you'll have come across Pat Morris, who is one of our trustees and a very knowledgeable person about hedgehogs. And he describes it as a rather ill-tempered and rather tedious affair. And if I don't know if you hope you can hear this. She says, I'm hoping this is going to play it. Maybe it's not even going to play at all. Let's have a look. It should do, but okay, it's not going to play, unfortunately. So what happens here is you've got a male and a female hedgehog, and they're circling and circling and circling each other, and it can go on for literally hours until the female decides, yeah, that she's ready to mate. And she will emit when she's fed up with him pestering her, she'll be emitting snorts and sort of sneezing like noises to drive him away and keep him at a distance until she's decided that she's ready. It really is a rather ill-tempered affair, and he literally walks round and round and round her in circles until eventually she gives in and presents herself to him, and they're able to mate, and that's where the babies come from, obviously. So yeah. Average litter size 4 or 5, but they don't normally raise more than about 3 to independence. They're born blind and pink and can be deserted. So this is a really critical time for hedgehogs when the hoglets are born. They're blind, they're pink, and if the nest is disturbed, the mother she might relocate them, which is fine, but she can desert them or disturb them or eat them, sorry, if the nest is disturbed. So it's a critical period in springtime when the hedgehog hoglets are born. As I said, the spines are enclosed in a fluid-filled sac but emerge very quickly, and they will leave the nest with their mum for about 4 or 5 weeks, and they'll be completely independent at 6 weeks. So a very short sort of juvenile period for hedgehogs, and they'll be out and about behaving like an adult from 6 weeks old. Mother may relocate her young if the nest is disturbed. I'm wondering if this video is going to play. Maybe this one's. Oh, maybe this one will. Or the previous one might have had an arrow at the bottom, did it? I'll have to flip back because I'd like to show you if I could, if I can. Come on, previous, previous.
Morag, I think I noticed on the
No,
banner
it
on top
doesn't.
of the PowerPoint, I think it wasn't going to enable any external media, it said. So I wonder if it's just
Ah, right, okay, because it's not embedded in it. This one should play, I think. So this is a female that has been disturbed. You can see her just behind the plant pots. And that's her with a hoglet in her mouth. You can see quite clearly in that picture that actually hedgehogs have much longer legs than you think they do. They're well hidden underneath the skirt of prickles. They actually do have quite long legs. And when she moves onto the slabs, you'll see that. She's bumping this poor wee baby's bottom all the way to where she's going. She does know where she's going. She will have a couple of maternity nests prepared, so she will know where she's taking him to. So there you go. That's what happens if you disturb a hedgehog nest. Okay, so let's move on to threats to hedgehogs. There's a lot of threats to hedgehogs. The population is declining. In the urban environment, we think that decline has leveled off now, and potentially, maybe beginning, we don't have definitive evidence yet, but maybe beginning to climb from a very low base. In the rural environment, hedgehog numbers are still plummeting, and hedgehog numbers have crashed in the last 25 years. They're more than half what they used to be. So the numbers are really, really, really down. Lots of different reasons that have caused them. And one of the main ones is agricultural intensification. You can see here that this expansion of field size is hugely detrimental to hedgehogs. They don't like wide open spaces. They need edges to travel around. They need edges to forage in. And when fields get bigger and bigger and bigger, those edges become further and further and further away for them. So they lose a lot of habitat. So intensification and the expansion of field sizes is a big issue. The loss of hedgerows as a result of agricultural intensification is a big issue for them as well. So that's causing them issues. Hedgerows are vital as refuge from predators, as routes for travel, and as foraging grounds as well, where they'll find lots of bugs and beasties living in hedgerows. So yeah, you can see. And the other thing that this image shows is not just the loss of hedgerows, but it's the loss of quality of hedgerows. So hedgerows have to be managed. And this is a huge issue now, is there are actually quite a lot of hedgerows being planted. But if those hedgerows are not managed so that they become thick and bushy at the base, which is where hedgehogs need the cover, um, then there are very, very little benefit to hedgehogs. So we actually need managed hedgerows. We don't just need hedgerows. Managed hedgerows are vitally important for hedgehogs. And there on the right, we've got a beautifully well managed hedgehog hedgerow with thick, dense growth all the way along the base there, and that's perfect hedgehog habitat. Okay, habitat loss, so not just through agriculture, through urbanization, which may be a double-edged sword for hedgehogs. They lose natural habitat, but they gain urban habitat where they are doing better than they are in the countryside. So, but the cementing over, plastic grass, concreting over of, gardens, lots of tarmac, big issues for hedgehogs. And we as an organization try to campaign to get people to think hedgehog when they're creating their gardens as well. Road construction, obviously roads an issue in themselves. We'll cover that in a minute. And the actual action of construction is, we don't know, we have no evidence, we have no idea how many hedgehogs are killed in the process of, say, building a housing estate. They will be killed, they'll be dug up, they'll be injured in big construction projects. So the actual construction itself is dangerous to them. Alongside habitat loss, we've got fragmentation. So these large fields, loss of hedgerows, the more loss of edge that we lose within the countryside. So hedges, edges, long tussocky grass along the edges of fields, along the edges of woodlands. This loss that leads to these habitats being fragmented means that hedgehogs can no longer move around easily without being predated upon, and they tend to move away from open landscapes into more fragmented landscapes, such as urban environments. So habitat fragmentation is a big issue. Oh, what's happened now? I seem to have got a pencil. Where did that come from? I want no, I don't want to annotate my.
I wonder if in
Where's
your
my
bottom
pen?
left, you
Yeah,
can,
I've got it
I
back.
will unpencil, I think.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so lots of hedgerows, road construction. Roads in themselves cause fragmentation. Hedgehogs will cross roads, as everybody knows, because you see dead hedgehogs on roads. Um, they don't have any instinct about where to cross the road, and if a car comes towards them, they curl up. They are, but the roads do act as a barrier. Major roads act as a barrier. Hedgehogs will tend not to, I won't say will not, but tend not to cross major roads and motorways. So they do tend to turn around and go back at those. So the roads themselves can act as a barrier for hedgehog movement. Roadkill, obviously, there's a hedgehog, car comes towards it, and what does the hedgehog do? It curls up in a ball, and unless you're being particularly careful, then you can quite easily squash yourself a hedgehog on your way home at night. So it is a big issue, and we do campaign to try and encourage safe driving, reduction in speed limits, etc., for hedgehogs. Okay, the big one, which always comes up, predation. So I'll deal with badgers first. Hedgehogs do have predators, and badgers are the main predators of hedgehogs. They are the only creature that is physically able, has the dexterity and the strength in its claws to unroll a hedgehog. And a lot of us that live in the countryside will have seen a hedgehog skinned, that's been, or husk, as we call them, that has been predated upon by a badger. Badger, but we have to emphasize that we don't want to demonize badgers. Badgers' numbers have gone up. Badger numbers, we don't know how much they've gone up by in England. We do know in Scotland because my previous job was with Scottish Badgers. And I ran the national survey in Scotland for 3 years trying to find out what was happening with badger numbers in Scotland. And we know numbers have gone up in Scotland, but they haven't gone up ridiculously. They've gone up a bit. And so badger numbers are up, and badgers do predate upon hedgehogs. But the big issue is this habitat loss, this loss of appropriate refuge for hedgehogs to go into, to escape from, and not to be visible for badgers in the first place. And in areas where there are no badgers, there are some areas where there are no badgers, there are also no hedgehogs. So East Anglia, there's low numbers of badgers. There's also low numbers of hedgehogs. So badgers aren't the prime blame in the loss of hedgehogs. The prime blame is our treatment of the environment and their habitat, and the destruction of their habitat and their connectivity that they need to survive. So badgers are a predator, but until we got involved, they were living alongside hedgehogs quite happily. Foxes are also a predator that gets kind of skirted over. Foxes will predate upon hedgehogs. They have a different strategy. They will sneak up upon a hedgehog when it is running away, and they will grab it by its leg and hang on. And that generally results in a hedgehog with a badly injured leg, quite often broken. And then you end up with a hedgehog that cannot forage, cannot feed itself, and eventually dies a fairly long and painful and sad death. So foxes are a predator, but all of these are natural. We have to keep reminding ourselves that, predation is a naturally occurring species survival strategy. It's what they do in the wild. So we have to make sure that we keep everything in perspective when we think about predation. The other predator that we have is dogs. And yeah, they predate upon badgers as well. And they're actually one of the biggest issues in the urban environment, is that the dog will pick up a hedgehog, can cause a bit of internal damage, may often not look like they've damaged them externally, but they've got internal damage. And that can be a big issue for for hedgehogs as well. I don't know if this one's going to play. No, it's not either. So this is a badger and a hedgehog feeding together. So people feed hedgehogs, people feed badgers, and they like having wildlife come into their garden. What we need to think about is if we are creating an unnatural environment, and for a hedgehog and a badger to be as in close proximity like that is entirely unnatural. The hedgehog will not go anywhere near a badger naturally. Um, a sad story that a friend of mine fed hedgehog and badger, and one day the badger decided it was extra hungry and turned around and ate the hedgehog because the hedgehog was no longer frightened of the badger and didn't try to escape and didn't even curl up. It just got eaten. So actually got it all on camera, which is a little bit disturbing. But yeah, so a little bit here. So I would recommend people if you've got badgers and hedgehogs feeding gathering in a feeding station in your garden is to stop feeding because you're affecting the relationship between two species that shouldn't be tolerant of each other. So have a think about it. If you want to get hedgehogs coming in and no sign of badgers, probably okay to carry on feeding. But if you've got badgers coming in, then have a good think about what you're doing. Okay. Okay, so yeah, other hazards. So these are garden hazards. This is things like netting, not as it gardens, but gardens. Football nets are bad for them. Strawberry netting, anywhere that you have netting can be bad for hedgehogs. They get caught up in it, they curl up in a ball, and they can't get out of it, and they will die. Bonfires, we have a big campaign every sort of October, November time about bonfires. Make sure you don't light your bonfire where you set it up and you move it somewhere else in case a hedgehog, perfect timing, comes along and goes, I'm just about thinking about hibernating. I'll just go in there and yeah, you light your fire, you get toasted hedgehog. Yeah, rescues get regular toasted hedgehogs arriving. Slug pellets, really bad for hedgehogs. They don't eat the slug pellets, the slugs eat the slug pellets, the hedgehogs eat the slugs. And yeah, really, really bad for hedgehogs. And for, machinery, so strimmers, sort of machinery that you guys will use in a woodland setting, so strimmers, brush cutters, the reciprocating blade, grass cutters, scrub cutters. There's remote controlled scrub cutters coming in now, which are hugely dangerous to hedgehogs. And we get lots and lots of hedgehogs with really severe injuries from strimmers and brush cutters and other garden and agricultural machinery. So yes, be super careful if you're strimming that you've checked an area for potential hedgehogs and that you're cutting from the top down. You don't just go straight in at the base because that's when you're going to get the hedgehogs. If you go top down, then you're going to get a chance to actually see what you're cutting before you cut it. Okay, so some of our projects, we've got the National Hedgehog Conservation Strategy, which was published 18 months ago. It was developed with a huge range of wider stakeholders. We had an initial threat analysis workshop followed by a 3-day workshop to develop strategies. And we came up with a list of threats to address. And those threats are decrease in natural food and habitat. So that's where you guys in the woodland situation come in. Increased vehicle collisions, very difficult to address. Unintentional mortality due to human intervention. That's picking up hedgehogs when they didn't really need picking up and not leaving them just to get on with their own lives. Being overly, well, I guess you're kind of anthropomorphizing hedgehogs and being overly careful with them and actually not letting them live naturally. Then you've got accidental deaths and misadventure, toxin accumulation, and genetic isolation. So there's 6 different strategies that we've developed that we're working on through working groups that we're setting up over the last, we've got 2 of our 5 working groups up and running now. So we also have the National Hedgehog Monitoring Programme, which is something that is trying to find out more about the where we find hedgehogs and the density of different hedgehog populations around the UK. So this has been running for 3 years now. We've just got funding to run it for another year. Potentially is lottery funding, so potentially going on to a further 3 years beyond that, 3 to 5 years beyond that. So fingers crossed. And this involves setting up a network of 30 camera traps across a 1 kilometre square site for 30 nights, using a careful strategy to make sure we can count and know what speed hedgehogs are moving at and know whether we're catching the same hedgehogs on different cameras. So it's a quite it goes over my head, to be honest. It's a very scientifically driven monitoring program, and we are getting some density estimates coming in now from the first couple of years of the project. So this is helping us find out more about hedgehogs in different environments. Unfortunately, we're not finding out a lot about hedgehogs in woodland environments because we're not getting sightings of hedgehogs through the cameras in woodland environments. Um, reasons yeah, reasons difficult to sort of nail down. Some of the researchers believe that's because hedgehogs aren't in woodlands, possibly because woodlands tend to be where there are a lot of badgers. Some people who are less scientifically minded, like me, think it's because we're not actually getting any photographs of the hedgehogs, so the cameras aren't able to pick up the hedgehogs in a complex woodland environment with a lot of undergrowth, and a hedgehog maybe snuffling along at the base of some undergrowth isn't triggering the camera. So I feel that potentially hedgehogs are there more than we think they are. And again, that's potentially where you guys come in with different techniques that we'll talk about. So the National Hedgehog Monitoring Programme is identifying hotspots and at-risk populations, and it's enabling us to target our conservation action and also to see whether our targets are being achieved. So I've got the NHMP now operating on a few of my rural sites so that I can get a good idea of what hedgehogs we have there. And if we do interventions on those sites, when we do the NHMP in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, on that site, we'll see whether those interventions that have hopefully increased the habitat, improved the habitat, are actually working. So those two projects are working together. So I'm not keeping an eye on my time at all. Okay, I'm halfway through. Okay, so we also have the big hedgehog map. This is something that I would really encourage you guys to think about contributing to. Just Google big hedgehog map and our big hedgehog map will come up, and you can log live sightings of hedgehogs and dead sightings of hedgehogs on that hedgehog map, which is really, really useful to us. Our researchers automatically go to the big hedgehog map when they're trying to find locations to carry out surveys, etc. So the more that we can have, and you'll see from the map there, our sightings focus on the urban areas. So we have areas that have got very few sightings, and these are areas where there are very few towns. So the more that we can get on the big hedgehog map in rural areas, the more use that map is going to be to me particularly, and to our rural hedgehog research as well. So please do, if you see hedgehogs, go to the on your land, go to the big hedgehog map and log them on there. I will say it is very slow, so be prepared to sit and wait for it to load and for it to get to your area. It can take quite a long time, just because it's got really, really hefty, and we haven't currently got the funds to be able to speed it all up and do the technical wizardry that we're meant to do, we need to do. So the hedgehog map gives us an idea of the distribution across the UK, and you can see that the further south we go, the denser the population gets. As I said, we have to take in mind where people are is where we're getting the sightings. You can log alive hedgehogs, dead hedgehogs, and hedgehogs specifically dead on roads. And we've got way over, I think we're over 200,000 records. We've got loads and loads of records on there. The data is shared with the NBN NatList and various other local biological recording centres if they request us to give them the information. We also publish the State of Britain's Hedgehog Report, and that is, we're currently writing the 2026 version of that. Comes out every 3 or 4 years, depending on how much change we've seen. And actually, there's been not a lot of change between 2022 and 2026. So 2022 is looking relatively similar at the moment. But we see that urban areas, the pictures of stable population, potentially showing signs of recovery, but we have to emphasize that's from a very low base. And the rural population are very low, with declines of between 30 to 75% nationally in the past 25, 26 years, which is really hard on hedgehogs. Okay, so what do we need? What do hedgehogs need? Looking at land management, they need food. So they need adequate source of invertebrate food sources, invertebrate prey. So natural food is by far and away the best for hedgehogs. Feeding them in your garden is a substitute for good natural food sources. So an adequate source of invertebrate food sources and vertebrate prey. I should change those words, I think. Water, so access to fresh water supply, and this is getting increasingly important with all the droughts that we're having, particularly this time of year. Last summer was very, very dry. This summer has been very, very dry, and we are finding very, very increased numbers of weakened hedgehogs, and we think that's probably due to hunger because their invertebrate food will go deep underground. The worms that they eat or will keep in the damp spaces that hedgehogs cannot access, and loss and lack of water supply for themselves. So having shallow-edged ponds and things like that where hedgehogs can get to water easily is really, really important. Shelter, so we need adequate, appropriate nesting sites and materials. So we're talking about thick we'll talk about that. Actually, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute. I'll just skirt through this. Cover from predators, so routes to move safely. I've already talked about this, and easily around their range to enable them to gather food, seek out nesting sites, and find other hedgehogs. Really important for the males to do their scouting around. Okay, so moving specifically to woodlands, what we know and what we don't. And to be absolutely honest, there's an awful lot we don't know about hedgehogs in woodlands. And we would welcome anything, any knowledge that can come from you guys about hedgehogs that you're seeing in and around your woodlands would be any information. Email me, drop me an email. That would be really, really, really useful, really, really beneficial. And would enable me to be able to offer good advice to other woodland owners when I'm approached for advice. So what we know and what we don't know. We have very little research data about hedgehogs in woodlands, and as I said, we're not entirely sure if that's because they're not there or because we're not finding them through the survey methods that we've been using. We know they should use woodlands. They are developed as a woodland species. Historically, you look in, stories, children's stories, the hedgehogs are always in the woods. You look at Beatrix Potter, the hedgehogs are always in the woods. So historically, hedgehogs have been in woodlands. We know that they have used woodlands and that they have historically been there and that they're well adapted for that habitat. So they should use woodlands. They may be affected by woodlands being a preferred habitat for badger sets. So what hedgehogs will do, they can coexist alongside badgers when badger density when badger density is low. If there's a set in a woodland, then usually you'll find hedgehogs around. If there's 5 sets in a woodland, then the density and the numbers of badgers have gone up, the hedgehogs will move out. They don't live around badgers when there are large numbers of them around. If there are smaller numbers of them around, they can coexist fairly happily. So it may be the woodlands are preferred habitat for badger sets. They will be affected by the structure of the woodland. So if the woodland has very little understory, very little scrub, very overgrazed, say by deer, very little long tussocky grass, that sort of understory level of that's the important bit for hedgehogs. That's they don't care about your trees. They really don't care give two hoots about the trees. They want the scrub and the understory. That's the important bit. So they will be affected by the quality of the understory of a woodland. If present, and we should assume that they could be in all woodlands, they will also be affected by management decisions and practices. So things that you decide to do with your woodlands. What I'm trying to do is to raise hedgehogs in everybody's minds and raise their profile and get everybody to start thinking hedgehog when they're thinking management. So start thinking, okay, what if I have hedgehogs here? What's this that I'm planning on doing? Is this going to have an effect on them? Is this going to be a good thing for them? Is this going to be a bad thing for them? So those management decisions and practices that you're making when you're managing your woodlands are really, really important to a potential hedgehog population. The location of a woodland, so because hedgehogs have moved out to an extent, from the wider countryside and have moved in towards the edges of towns and villages, woodlands that border towns and villages are going to be very important for them because they can, if there is the means of them being able to move, so if they're well connected to an urban location, they may well move back and forwards. They'll use the woodland as a hibernation site. We know they use woodlands as hibernation locations. They'll use the invertebrate food sources in woodlands when there's lower amounts of artificial food that they're not getting fed so much in a town or a village. So woodlands that border towns and villages are going to be very important for the way hedgehog populations are distributed at the moment. The connectivity between woodlands and towns and villages is vital. So one of the things I've been talking with one of my project groups, I've got a group in Derbyshire who we're looking at the farms around the village and the land directly associated with the village, and we're looking at how they connect. And if there is hedgehogs in the village, but there's no way of them safely travelling to a woodland, then they're not going to go. Whereas if there's a good network of hedgerows and small pockets of woodland and scrub, etc., then they're going to start potentially moving freely back and forwards between those different habitats. And that connectivity is really, really important. So try not to think about woodlands in isolation, but how they connect up to other woodlands and other habitats. So yeah, connectivity between woodlands and other habitats as well is also vital. Woods in farmed landscapes may support hedgehogs if the connectivity is good. So as we know, hedgehogs tend not to use the arable landscape so much as they potentially did. Hedgehogs do use pastoral land more. They will forage in pastoral land, and they will use woodlands edging onto pasture land as well. Um, if the connectivity between the woodland and the potential foraging ground is good. So this connectivity between woodlands and what surrounds them is really, really important. Um, there's always a but. Many rural woodlands support badgers in high density and so are less suitable for hedgehogs. So you will find badgers in almost every rural woodland that you go to. I know that from experience of my survey work in Scotland. Finding a woodland without a badger set is really quite unusual. Finding a woodland with only one badger set is fine though. Finding a woodland with 5, 6 badger sets is more of an issue. So again, badgers in high densities are less suitable for hedgehogs. Okay, looking at woodland habitat, I'm afraid this isn't a picture of a woodland scrub, but it is a lovely picture of a kind of scrubby habitat. And scrubby areas are really, really important. Scrubby areas provide a selection of nesting sites. So hedgehogs use 3 different types of nesting sites. They have their hibernation sites, the hibernacula, which are quite different from every other site. They have their day nesting sites, and they will curry down for a day nest in long scrubby grass on the edge of a field, in a bit of not particularly dense, hedgerow, but that is of less important. The density is of less importance to them for day nesting, and they also have their maternity nests as well, which have to be safe and inaccessible to predators so that the mum feels safe with their babies. So scrub areas provide a selection of nesting sites and materials. Materials are important. I'm not sure if it probably will be in here later on. I'll talk about it in a minute if it's not. Provides habitat for their prey. So scrubby area is really important for their favourite prey. So beetles, caterpillars particularly, worms. Scrubby area is really, really important. Scrubby areas both in and out with woodlands, really, really important. And there we go, broad-leaved woodland trees. So when they're creating their hibernacula, where they're going to hibernate, they like to line their nest site. So they'll choose a dense, an area of dense scrub, a very thick hedge, somewhere that's really thorny, brambles, something like that, and they'll build their hibernacula within that. They might choose a hollowed out log, that sort of thing, but they will use broad-leaved leaves from large broad-leaved trees. So birch are too small, beech are perfect. Sycamore are a bit too big. They tend not to use sycamore, so the kind of bigger. Oops. Apologies, that's my dog going off. Walter. Oh, okay. So they tend to use the larger leaves. Lime, great, nice soft leaves for them to deal with, nice big leaves for them to deal with. Hawthorn, totally useless for hibernacula. They won't use them at all in lining their hibernacula. So the bigger the leaves, the better for their hibernacula. And they're really quite picky about that. And they'll layer them and almost mesh them together to provide a really windproof, cozy hibernation site. Dense thorny scrub, hugely important for cover from predators and for safe nesting and hibernation. So as I said, um, bramble is hugely underestimated in its importance for wildlife. Lots and lots and lots of conservation managers spend a lot of time removing bramble from their site. And obviously you don't want a site that's totally overrun by bramble because it's not ideal for everything that we're thinking about. We try not to be single species in our outlook, but it is really important for hedgehogs. So a good brambly, thick, thorny patch is really vital for hedgehogs.
Can they live under it because their spines protect them so they can be safe in there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's draggy. It's not particularly pleasant for badgers to get in amongst. Don't tend to choose to go in amongst bramble particularly. They do tend to choose to go in amongst gorse. Badgers love gorse and will build their sets within gorse, but they don't build their sets within bramble and really dense thorny scrub in the same way as hedgehogs. I think hedgehogs can trundle through it fairly easily.
Mm.
Woodland edge, so they will use woodland edges as daytime nesting locations and hibernation locations, and they'll venture to the edges to forage because prey species tend to be more abundant on the edges of woodlands than in the very dense middle of woodland, particularly if you're thinking about coniferous woodland where there's very little life in the dense dark bits of coniferous woodlands. So they will tend to woodland edges. Keeping your woodland edges hedgehog friendly is really important as well. So again, keeping that scrubbiness there at your woodland edges, giving them cover so that they can dot out into whatever field or landscape is outside and still have that safety net that they can get back into afterwards. So that's really important. I'm going to dot into hedgerows because whilst they're not woodlands per se, they are vitally important and connect woodlands together. So we must have that density at the base of a hedgerow that has never been laid. So an aging hedgerow that has never been coppiced or laid is of no use to a hedgehog. So density at the base is vitally important. Again, these mixed broadleaves to provide the nesting materials and allowing scrubby outcrops in your hedgerows to provide a patchwork of different habitats for hedgehogs, and provides the shelter and the connectivity that they need. Tussocky grasslands, so thinking woodland habitats, so having glades and whatever within your woodlands where there's long tussocky grass, really good for hedgehogs. They've got that woodland edge, they've got the glade, they've got the tussocky grassland to forage within and to hide out in during the day. So having some really good areas of more open tussocky grassland within your woodland is perfect as well. Provides day nest sites and cover for hedgehogs when they're out and about at night. Thinking hedgehogs, so working safely for hedgehogs, and this is really important as land managers as well. So consider the impact. So think hedgehogs. Think about what you're doing and what impact it's going to have on hedgehogs. Think seasonally. So hedgehogs have a very distinct seasonal cycle, and woodland management has very distinct seasonal cycles. Starts getting complicated because we don't want hedgehogs to be disturbed in winter. Legally, you are required to minimize your woodland management in the bird breeding season, and we acknowledge and accept that, and say if you think you're going to be disturbing hedgehogs, at least try to minimize the disturbance. And if you cannot minimize the disturbance because of the work you're doing, at least think about hedgehogs while you're doing it and keep your eyes open for them and try to minimize the disturbance if you do see hedgehogs and be aware of their potential presence. So yeah, strimmers, just emphasizing be hedgehog aware with strimmers, brush cutters, reciprocating blade cutters, all these things. Um, be hedgehog aware. Top down cuts, don't go straight in at the base. So that's when you're going to kill a hedgehog. And think about the materials you're using. Are they safe for hedgehogs? Some of the fencing that is used around particularly horse fields is totally inaccessible to hedgehogs. So the size of hole that hedgehogs can safely navigate is 13 centimeters square. Any netting that comes in below that can be a problem for hedgehogs. If it's wider than, so 13 centimeters square is the ideal. If you had, say, 10 centimeters by 20 centimeters, then that's probably fine because they can kind of squash themselves down and widen themselves out to get through it. So, but just have a think of the materials you use and are they safe and are they hedgehog friendly? And is fencing hedgehog friendly? Okay, I'm running on here. So recording hedgehogs in rural environments. Most of our data, as I said, comes from urban environments. NHMP is our National Hedgehog Monitoring Programme. It's slowly changing that, but we need a little bit more. We need to know what rural habitats hedgehogs are frequenting, and we need reports of sightings. So how could you help us find that out? I'm running at the moment, we offer guidance and guidelines into footprint tunnel surveys. Now, we can help support you carry out footprint tunnel surveys to help you decide if you have hedgehogs on your land. And this might be a way of, we haven't done much within woodlands and the hedgehog footprint tunnel surveys. We have all the guidelines, and it may be something that if any of your members were interested in carrying out, I have a set of hedgehog tunnels that can be mailed out to for use. So if you had a number of people that were interested in using them, then I could mail you out a set and you could move them around. It's a 1 week survey. It's not an incredibly labor intensive, but it does require one visit a day to each of your hedgehog tunnels. But if you were interested in doing that to find out if you actually have hedgehogs, if you don't know, then by all means, please do get in touch with me, and we can work out how that could be done. I obviously offer an advisory service, so if you want to know more, then drop me an email, give me a ring, and I can talk hedgehogs until I'm blue in the face. We have leaflets and publications. We just have Managing Your Land for Hedgehogs, completely rewritten leaflet, just about to hit printing, should be out within the next month, and that will become available to you. So, Sarah, I could maybe send you some copies of that, and you could then
Yeah, great.
send them to some of your members. That would be great.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it does focus on the agricultural landscape, but it does offer advice for all landowners, so land managers. And this is a thought, and I'm saying upcoming Hedgehogs in the Countryside blog. This is potentially not quite as upcoming as I would lead you to believe, but it's an idea I've had that I would like to do is to try and just blog a little bit about hedgehogs, where we're finding them, and get different landowners and managers to contribute to that and tell us a bit more about where hedgehogs are. So that's something I'm thinking about doing as well. So you guys could feed into that as well, which would be really useful. So there we go. Thank you very, very much for your attention this evening. And yeah, ready to answer questions if there are any.
Oh, thanks, Morag. That was fantastic. I think we've all learned loads, and I'm so most surprised at the skeleton of a hedgehog. I didn't realize they had like I thought they were like little
I know.
cartoons, like little funny little stubby legs, but they don't, do they?
No, they've got proper full long legs. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'll
Um,
stop sharing here and
okay, great. Yeah, let's see people's
see
faces. So
people. Yeah.
I'll have a little offend of the questions. So Mike says that yeah, they have blonde hedgehogs in Alderney.
That's
Um,
Alderney. Thank you very much. Yes, that's
yeah.
it. That's the place.
Um, so got a few photos of people with the hedgehogs. Oh, here's a question. What age do female hedgehogs become fertile?
As soon as they're so within the first year, they'll be breeding within by the next breeding season after they've been born. Very, very quick development.
Okay. Peter, our Cornwall Woodland resident, says he wonders how hedgehogs deal with Cornish hedges because they're a little bit different to
Okay, I don't know what
up,
Cornish hedges are
country
coming from
hedges.
Fife, so tell me about a Cornish hedge.
Peter? Peter, if you could type in
Yes.
the
Yeah,
chat. Oh, hang on, there you go. Yeah, Peter.
sorry. Well, but basically they are banks edged with stone,
Okay.
usually several feet high, and they're quite thick with vegetation on top and vegetation on the sides as well. So just wondered, I mean, they could travel along the bottom, I suppose, couldn't
I would have thought that they would find those fairly inaccessible at the tops of them. Certainly, they're
they?
not very good at climbing, but they would probably, if the vegetation sort of along the base of them is
Mm.
fairly thick, then they would use them as a kind of navigation traveling route.
Yeah. Well, there's
But
yeah, there's quite a bit of space at the base of hedges and between the actual cultivated land. So, quite a nice bit of
yeah,
cover. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, because they'll need to leave that space because machinery will get damaged coming up against them, and
Mm.
the hedge will get damaged by machinery, won't it? So,
Yeah.
so potentially there's potentially good hedgehog habitat along the base of
Mm.
those
Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Lucy says that she has seen hedgehog in her woodland, but Michael and Jen have had wildlife cams. They've caught basically everything but hedgehogs on there. So
hmm Yeah,
between us, there's plenty of us. We can get some sort of definitive answer on this. I think we're your crack team.
I
Um,
think you might be. Yes, that would be really good.
we've decided we're going to call our campaign "Swog for Hogs,"
Oh wow, fantastic! Yeah,
and for the kids,
that's
"Swoglets for Hoglets." Yeah.
you can get the kids involved as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Somebody here, Janet asks, how far are hedgehogs likely to travel to get water?
Okay, I mean they can travel about a kilometer in a night. They're quite mobile. Males particularly will travel further than females. Females tend to be more resident in an area. They don't hold territories as such. They're not territorial in any way. But the females tend to stay around one area more than a male will. A male will move around all over the place. I
Okay.
would have thought that up to 1 kilometer is potentially how far that they could move for water, but they would want not to have to travel that far.
Yeah. Okay. So Simon asks, how can we ensure temporary deer fences don't exclude hedgehogs, but also don't let in small deer and muntjac?
I know it's challenging. One of the things I didn't mention is electric fencing. Electric fencing is utterly horrendous for hedgehogs.
Mm,
Because they don't have a flight response, they get a shock, they don't move away, they curl up, and potentially they can curl up round that wire and get shocked and shocked and shocked and shocked until they die. So electric fencing, we ask that the bottom strand of electric fencing, where at all possible, is not electrified. Electric netting, particularly, is really bad. And yeah, electric fencing raise that bottom strand up 30 centimeters so that
Right.
hedgehogs, but many people use electric fencing to keep other predators like badgers and foxes out. And as soon as you do that, you're letting them in. So there's lots and lots of challenges. So electric fencing is really bad. One of the things that we're investigating with other sorts of fencing is and I have a group of people in Derbyshire who are kind of investigating this, is whether or not we can cut out, in standard Rylock stock netting, cut out cut out the verticals to make them
mm.
wider but lower. So they're low but they're wider. And maybe doing that every, 20 meters or so that a hedgehog trundling along the fence can get through. So we're investigating that, which potentially would be a way of not letting in the larger things that you're trying to keep out. We're also investigating, and this is a very early small group investigation, whether we're not putting a pipe under a fence, so just a bit of drainage pipe, the perforated drainage pipe through
Mm.
under a fence and back up the other end is a potential. Whether or not a hedgehog would use it, we don't know, but
Have
it's
you
a
seen
possible and it's
Holland?
worth it.
They've
Sorry?
what they've done with the curbs in Holland. They've got like little tunnels.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool,
Yes,
isn't
so
it?
potentially they might use that. We don't know. Um, So there's lots of things that are worth a try just to see if they work. If you're doing anything innovative with fences that you think maybe blocking hedgehogs and you find that it is working, then please let me know. If you're doing anything innovative at all that might be helping hedgehogs, please let me know. That would be really useful as well. So yeah, there are potential solutions, but there are also, yeah, some things are really hard to get around as well.
I think I think we've got a good team of people here. The swag community. If there's a problem, we tend to work together to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah, I mean,
quite excited
this
to
is a
see what
group
we
up
can come
in
up with
the
with
group up in
this.
Derbyshire that are investigating head fences, and they're particularly interested in fences and hedgehogs, and whether or not fences are proving a barrier to hedgehogs
My
as
my
well.
bit of woodland is in a patch that's lit a stone's throw from Nottingham Trent University, and I saw that that's one of your partners. So maybe we
Yes,
could do something there. I'll email.
yes, and the researcher that keeps telling me hedgehogs don't use woodlands, he's based at Nottingham Trent, so that could be really useful.
Oh, he could come and have a look for himself.
Yeah, exactly. We've
Um,
got a woodland with hedgehogs in it.
Okay, Rich says that they've had no hedgehogs in any of the footprint tunnels across their land, but we did get camera trap footage where food fell out of the pine marten feeder stations in the woodland. Are footprint tunnels considered a useful way to monitor hedgehogs? So, and where would be best to put them?
Yes, as I said, we don't have a lot of experience of using them in woodlands. They are considered a useful way of gauging presence absence of hedgehogs if you use our procedure, so our guidelines, which is putting hedgehog tunnels out for a week. Very roughly, putting them out for a week. We would advise people to put them along edges, so along fence lines, maybe the edges of paths, places where hedgehogs will tend to naturally move around. Much more difficult to find hedgehog footprints in places where there are no edges. And that's where woodlands are again challenging because there are fewer edges within a woodland habitat to place the tunnels. But I can certainly send our guidance on using hedgehog tunnels to you, Sarah, and you can
Yeah,
circulate it
do. I
around
think we're going
everyone.
to do something with this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very much, Morag. I think we'll leave it there. I think yeah, if you send me any details and I can forward it on, and then of course I will
yeah,
upload this, send you the link when I've done the YouTube as well, and I'll put some info in there. But thank you so much for your time. I think we've all really enjoyed this, and hopefully between us we'll see how many hedgehog sightings we have in our woodlands, and
that would be
let's
really
work
good.
let's work
Yes.
together. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, anything that you can get to me, please do. And please do drop me an email if you've got any questions that you want answering specific to your own woodlands as well. So yeah.
Great. And if I know if we get any footage, we're always really we like sharing our
Oh, please do.
trail
Yeah,
footage.
share
It's what
footage.
we
That'd be
do.
great.
So right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
all
and I'll
very
be in
much.
touch, everyone. And thanks for joining, everyone. And I'll see you all for the
Thank
next
you.
one. Ta-ta.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.